Got it. Oh, that thing went jump fast, yeah.
Yeah, this new one, there's no wait. It just goes straight. So anyway, and everybody can hear us talking. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Uncle Charlie. This is Uncle Mel Raposo, and thank you for joining us tonight on Monday, the 9th of August. And hope you're having a great start to a new week, everyone. But as you can tell, there's a watch behind me, and that means that it's 10 to 7 right now. And I've been here at work since 5 a.m., and it's now 10 to 7. And I'd just like to wish everyone aloha. Welcome for joining us. How you doing, Brother Mel?
Considering what's going on, I'm doing all right. Kind of excited for tonight's speaker, Dr. Jonathan Dworkin, infectious disease specialist, also a doctor there on the Big Island of Hawaii.
Yes.
We're gonna pick his brain tonight and try to make some sense out of what's going on. I'm baffled. Hey, aloha everybody. Hello everybody. I see you guys all popping on and saying aloha. Aloha to all of you.
Yes. Yes.
I'm dumbfounded, I guess. Frustrated. Scared. Scared. And every day I wish, Charlie, I wish that when we watch the news or watch one of these star advertiser interviews, I wish that our leaders woke up and started paying attention. And I kind of want to save a lot of the discussion for when the doctor gets here, because I really want to get his take on it. Hello, Dad. I love you, man. I don't understand what they don't get. I posted today about Labor Day, 28 days till Labor Day.
Right.
And then I put a little quote that I learned many years ago. Failure to plan is a plan to fail. And we know what's coming. We know, and I know a lot of people got excited with the little drop in cases, but you understand today's numbers are from Saturday, which we traditionally have the lower numbers on the weekends because the lab doesn't operate at full staff as they do during the week. So one more death today, over 200 people in the hospitals today. I don't know when that damn switch will go off. And we get good friends in all different industries. Tina Yamaki was on tonight, and I love Tina. I love her, what she does, and that's her job. Her job is to lobby for the small businesses, and she's on the news saying, we cannot have any more restrictions. It's going to put business out of business, and go tell that to Matt Funga's family, football coach from Kahuku that died the other day. Go tell that to the family that died today. Tell that to the 3 that died a few days ago, and the 2 that the day before that. Tell that to Charlie Iona, who lost his brother. I don't get it, Charlie, and it started to eat up inside, and I honestly, Ige said restrictions are coming, but what Ige said was it's not going to be as it was. It's going to be strategic. They don't want to interrupt business. So what it sounded like they were going to do was start focusing on we have invited Dr. Vong. We have invited Dr. Vong to come on. So they look like they're going to focus on the backyard gatherings, the small gatherings, the local gatherings. I don't know what to tell you, man. I got some information a little while ago. I'm not going to put out because I haven't verified it yet, but it could be another big cluster here in Kauai from one of the events that we've been talking about. Of course, you're not going to hear it on the news, but I'm doing my own. I just found out about it, so I got to do my own research. But I guess, Charlie, it's just frustrating.
Right. Right.
Frustrating, man. And
Mhm. Well, Mel, let me say this. Your frustration is shared by many. It's not unwarranted. It is warranted because we have a hard time understanding because we were exposed to the early days of the pandemic, right? And with numbers fewer than what we're having now, caused us to go into a shutdown, caused us to go into a curfew. Now I understand since then vaccinations came out, but the vaccines doesn't seem to be slowing things down. And maybe a lot of the weight is being placed on vaccine because that's what local government is preaching. Vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. Okay. So there is a two-sided prong to everything. And that is, well, on one side, we talk about the vaccines. The other side, we are finding out what's making things worse. And that's the thing that is bothering me the most is what can come worse, what can happen. And it's like if somebody gets really sick, then it's up to somebody else to go take care of that person, meaning our frontline heroes that are working their tails off. I mean, we hear it every day, right? You look at the local hospitals, facilities on Oahu as an example. There's a lot of diverting going on. People with anything else other than COVID is being turned away from the major facilities like Queens and so forth. And when you hear those kind of stories, it makes you wonder, what if hospitals like Kahuku General becomes overrun? What happens if North Kohala General, is overrun? What do you do? And we've spoken about this many times. What do we set up to take care of the people? The problem is this: we don't have enough personnel. We always hear about, you know, getting more, the feds bringing in more people, trying to get 100 to 150, at least the first to go around. Okay, great on Oahu. What about the outer islands? What about Kauai? And what about Maui, Molokai, Lanai? Every place like that. Many different places on the Big Island, in the rural areas, right? That's not close to a facility. What happens to them when someone gets sick? So these are a lot of things that need to be answered relatively quickly, so it can put it's not about just this virus that's spreading out of control. It's about, what about the aftermath when someone needs medical attention? What do we do? And I think that's even scarier. That's even scarier.
you know, Charlie, today I was at work and my head has just been spinning the last few days, and I just drew. I was doodling, one infected person with this new variant can infect up to nine,
Mm-hmm.
and we have 650 of them yesterday, or 620, whatever it was. I don't care.
Right.
Let's just say we had hundreds that are possibly infecting nine, and let's just say five each. Let's just say one each. We know it's
Right.
more than that. Most of these people are asymptomatic. They don't know they have it. So I don't, when they implement restrictions, after the curve starts to drop, we have all this infected people that still haven't really been identified yet because of the incubation period and all of that. So what the hell are we waiting for? I guess that's the thing. That's the thing. What are we waiting for? You're waiting for the beds get full, which they already are, and then what happens with that second wave of people that were infected from the wave that's already in the hospital?
Right.
What do you do with them? Now, I see on Oahu, a lot of the hospitals are starting to put up their little MASH hospitals outdoors to catch the trauma patients or whatever. What does that tell you when they start doing that? See, they know what's happening.
Mhm.
They know. and they're preparing for it. But our leaders are not. Our leaders are. I mean, listen. They, if it was something else, they would work as long as it took. If it took 12, 14 hours to come to a compromise between the governor and the mayors to come out with some safety protocols, they would do it. And they're not doing it. They met Friday, ah, couldn't finish. We'll go meet again Monday. They met today,
Mhm.
couldn't finish, no problem. We'll meet again. And our numbers are rising. And I don't see the sense of urgency, and it drives me nuts because we're at a critical stage right now. We're at a critical stage right now. And
Right.
there is absolutely zero sense of urgency. And again, Hilo Medical, I think, came out with a post just a little while ago about, blasting in caps the public who's saying that it's visitor travel. We always say travelers. We don't give a damn. We don't differentiate between a returning resident or a visitor. But they made a professional post from a hospital saying, stop saying that it's visitor. Uh, we say travel, number one, and I don't know who the hell wrote that post, but think about it. These tourists, these visitors aren't getting tested. That's why they're not showing up. Now, that's just my pet peeve right now. When people try to convince me, when on Kauai, yesterday's count, 12 cases, 100% travel related. Today's right now, I'm keeping a running total. We're at 54%. 54% travel related. So please do not tell me that all that 54%. Now, if we tested the same amount of visitors as we did locals, guess what? Guess what? So it bothers me because these people are supposed to be smarter, and they should be caring for our people. And they're more concerned about business. They're more concerned about everything else. And it's going to bite them in the ass, and it's going to happen. And the sad part is people are going to die. People are going to die. Hey, listen to the HPH guy. You can see he's nervous. He's nervous. Listen to epidemiologist or virologist specialist Dr. Tim Brown, who did an interview the other day on the East West Center. I posted it. I've invited him on the show. He hasn't responded yet. He made it very clear. He made it very clear. Look at the Mayo Clinic that I put as well. Go to my page, guys. I put up a lot of interviews. Yes, half an hour long. Take the time and watch it. The Mayo Clinic one is. Who's going to argue that the Mayo Clinic is not the best place, hospital research center in the world? I know. I was there many times with my mom, and world leaders from other countries come to the Mayo Clinic. I seen it with my own eyes. That guy, it made it very clear. And I guess, Charlie, I asked you this question, and not to be funny or not to, just I ask you, who do you think our governor, well, Lieutenant Governor will change a tune this morning, begging the people, saying that we're going to see a lot of illness and death by September if we don't behave. But who are they listening to, Charlie? Who?
Mhm.
I don't know. Are they
Well,
listening to the business community, the visitor industry? I mean, really, who are they listening to?
I think I have to say the visitor industry because uh, they have the most to lose, really. But we all have a lot to lose. We're losing, people are losing their battle with this thing, right? It would be nice to know that we have zero deaths, but can we say that? We cannot. And that's the finicky thing about this. Okay, I'm not saying that's a funny thing, it's a finicky thing. Because I've said it before on several shows now. This virus is behaving in such a way, you there is no one that right now that can tell me with certainty that this is what's going to happen and what part is going to, peak and then it's going to start to go away. Cannot. We thought about that several months ago, right? When the Delta variant first came on board. We said, because why? The first virus, right? The regular COVID, we weren't getting the numbers that the mainland was getting. So a lot of us had the same impression with the Delta variant. Eh, shouldn't be a problem because we did pretty good the first go around, right? We got vaccinated and all of that. What happened? This thing has just started to rage its own battle. And so that's why I said, we really got to be careful on how this thing acts. I haven't heard from anybody yet that says, oh, this is what's going to happen in 3 weeks. This is what's going to happen in 2 weeks. I've heard predictions made and pretty spot on by individuals like Dr. Lee Altenberg, right? It says that as long as this continued, and he show us the graph, and he showed what would happen, especially when schools open, right?
Mhm.
Told us about that. That's scary in and of itself. Because now we're talking about our children. We don't want to see them get sick. Unfortunately, some will. Some will. Why? Because they can't get vaccinated because of their age. But yet, the school says it's pretty safe to go back to school. Well, let's see. Let's see how that comes out. Let's just see how that comes out.
They asked Dr. Tim Brown, would you send your kid to school? Absolutely not.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what bothers me. It's planes are safe, airports are safe, all these concerts are safe. I mean, and our numbers are rising. I don't, I try hard to understand or comprehend what drives their decisions. I really do. I just don't get it. I give them the benefit of the doubt, I just can't. I honestly, for the life of me, cannot figure it out. And it doesn't change, every day. Like I said, Charlie, every morning I turn on that news. I watch the Star Advertiser. I watch the press conferences. I watch all of these things, hoping that somebody would wake up. And it doesn't seem like they're waking up. In fact, it's just the same old stuff that's regurgitated, delivered in a little different way. But at the end of the day, nothing is being done. Dr. Jonathan Dworkin, infectious disease specialist, doctor on the front line on the big island of Hawaii. You look tired.
Hey,
I don't.
Mel,
Yes, sir.
he's our doctor extraordinaire. And
You
he
don't even
starts
know,
off,
man.
yeah, he starts off with his humble beginning. Look at what's behind him. It's that plantation style that every time he comes on, I get so relaxed. And here I am at work and I'm nearly in a reclined position. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Well, I know we got a lot to talk about. A lot. I'm not myself right now, so I'm gonna try and keep myself together for this show. But Doc, first of all, thanks for joining us again.
Yes.
Our I can read the comments. Our viewers are very happy. They call you Doctor Whoop Whoop, Whoop Whoop. We got to figure out a Star Wars character for you. C3PO. I'm
The
R2D2.
smugglers.
I'm R2D2. So you're my buddy. You're my partner. I'll be honored to be your little R2D2.
And I'm Chewy.
Doc.
Well, yeah, man, it's been a mess over here.
I think it's becoming a mess everywhere. And we kind of wanted to just pick your brain a little bit and get your insights of what we're doing and what we're not doing and what we need to do. So what's going on, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, what's different, and a little bit like disconcerting about this wave is, at least on the Big Island, I think this is clearly the worst wave, that we've experienced. And yet everything is just blazing along outside the hospital. We got people coming in on vacations. The hotels are humming, the restaurants are open, the bars are open. And yet, when you walk inside the hospital, the tension level is enormous. I mean, people are really stressed out. We're just getting hit with more admissions than we've been hit with at any point previously. where I work at Queens North Hawaii, we don't have a lot of bed capacity. We don't have a lot of ICU capacity. We don't have an ICU doctor. We got 4 ICU beds, and we've got an excellent team of internists. That's a very small team that manages the ICU with help from telehealth from Queens Punch Bowl. We've got barely enough nurses and nurses aides to take care of the patients. And, we're under strain, man. I mean, we really are. And yet when I walk outside, it's party time everywhere. So, and this feels a little bit different qualitatively than it felt before. Prior to this year, the previous mayor, Mayor Kim, who you had on, he took the disease control side of things very seriously. And he was part of the Safe Travels plan, but he had additional border control with an entry rapid antigen test. He met regularly with the district health officer and with docs, and had a plan to squash any little cluster that popped up anywhere. I don't see any evidence that anything like that's going on right now. I mean, it just seems like there's just uncontrolled transmission everywhere I look.
Wow. So let me ask you there, Doc. We've heard of so many different approaches to this now, right? Everything is get vaccinated, get vaccinated. That seems to be the trumpeting call of getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
But that alone is not getting us anywhere close to controlling it. And then, we're talking about, I guess the other thing to the flip side to this whole thing is the discipline, whether there's enough people out there that have enough discipline to keep this virus at bay, right? Because they're looking at numbers where, when we get clusters, multi-generational families, events that people are attending, there's sort of this saying that, well, if people get that cooped up feeling for so long, they're going to buckle loose sooner or later, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, what a time to buckle loose with this with this Delta variant. It's the worst time ever,
Yeah, that's right.
So how do we? I mean, and Mel talked about this earlier. It just seems like government is just taking a backseat, or there's something that's causing this restraint. I mean, this huge restraint, and for the life of us, we just can't understand why it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to speak for the people in charge because I'm not in regular touch with them the last couple of weeks. I've just been working. I can tell you this, from having sat in on a bunch of city and county meetings at different times, different counties, and having met with a few of the different mayors at different phases of the pandemic, the mentality shifted after the vaccine became available. So prior to the vaccine being available, anybody could get COVID. It was fundamentally thought to be, okay, it's bad luck if you get COVID, and we had no real effective control strategy for preventing severe disease. And the potential for the hospitals to just totally melt down was high. So, I could go to an official as an ID doctor and say, if you don't help us with this, the hospital is going to melt down and it's not going to be there for you. And that got through to those guys, on some level, right? And we saw, pretty aggressive restrictions of businesses, of movement, of the border, mask mandates, all those types of things. We had leadership changes in 2 of the counties, right? And that correlated with the rollout of the vaccine. And I can tell you, as soon as that vaccine became available, the mentality became, well, we just need to vaccinate. And the funny thing to me is, like, when I talk to people who aren't vaccinated, they seem to think that, like, there's this conspiracy of the elites to, like, get them to be vaccinated. Like I'm an elite apparently, and I want to control them and do this to them. And actually, it's the opposite. What I'm seeing is a conspiracy to sort of ignore them. If you're an elite in Hawaii, if you're a politician or a well-connected lawyer or a well-connected business person, you're vaccinated. Everyone in your family is vaccinated. All of your friends are vaccinated. All of your business associates are vaccinated. And you're gonna close things for these guys that won't get vaccinated. That's the mentality. They're like, we're done with these people, and we don't care if they get sick. I don't think they'll say that out loud, but I think there's an element of that going on. Now the problem is, because we've got 40% of the state unvaccinated, that's plenty for Delta to rampage through, and we're still going to see the hospitals get overwhelmed. And nobody's safe if the hospitals get overwhelmed. So these guys who have been taking disease control less seriously may end up regretting that, because at some point the healthcare is going to break down. We're already under tremendous strain to provide non-COVID healthcare. I'm spending a lot of my day thinking about the non-COVID patients and thinking about, okay, I've got all these balls in the air with the non-COVID patients. I got to make sure that they get what they need and that I don't drop any of those balls, and they need a lot. And at the same time, I'm just getting hit with COVID after COVID after COVID after COVID after COVID. So at some point it breaks down, and it'll particularly break down if we start seeing healthcare workers get sick, and then we're understaffed. And that's when you end up, with the India-like situation where you got people dying because they're not getting medical care. And at that point, you might see them decide, okay, we're going to do a lockdown or something like that, because then it affects them, right? So I think that's the actual conspiracy. The conspiracy isn't to inoculate people. The conspiracy is to blow people off, because we want business to run, right? That's my read of the situation anyway. And I noticed the temperature dropped towards any types of public health measures once it became possible to avoid the worst outcome of the vaccine, right? And that's not smart, for all the reasons we talked about.
So let me ask you one last question, okay?
Yeah.
And then I'll turn it over to my partner there real quickly. So example, we have 10 people, right? 60% vaccinated. So that 4 people has a chance of catching this COVID and catching it bad. What do you think is the numbers that we have left in this state to be tagged by COVID to really make a huge difference, to say, okay, there's no more COVID to go around because we got the last of the 40% of the unvaccinated population, right? But yet, on the same token, because we're having numbers always coming in, that's adding to the mix. That mix is continually fluid. It's continually moving. So we cannot say that, okay, definitive, out in rural part of Kohala, we've got 500 people less, unvaccinated, they possibly can get COVID. We cannot say that because we don't know how many are coming in and taking a trip up to Kohala to make that 500 left, maybe 700.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of getting worried about, because then it starts overflowing into community spread. And so Mel said this one night, how do we effectively shut this thing down if we don't even pay attention to the community spread on top of that?
I think the issue with, there's this sort of like myth of herd immunity that if we allow the infection to spread around a certain amount, that we'll all be more immune to it. And then at a certain point, it'll go away, or it won't be as dangerous. And I've always disliked that way of thinking, because the virus is under no obligation to cooperate with that strategy, right? So you look at a country like Brazil, right? They have a far right populist anti-science guy that they elected, right? So all through 2020. He was, making up nonsense comments. He made Trump look like a genius, some of the things he said, and was promoting all kinds of ridiculous, non-treatments for the disease, and telling people it was no big deal. And they had absolutely uncontrolled transmission and a huge mortality in Brazil, right? Okay, so did they get to herd immunity? Look at the COVID curve for Brazil. It's shaped like a tombstone. Except there's no end to the tombstone. It's like a plateau, and it goes down a little bit and it goes right back up again, right? They don't even really have proper waves. They just have a sort of jagged peak, right? And what happens is, COVID rips through, and then it goes away a little bit, and they think, okay, we're finally at herd immunity. And then another variant comes through. They had the P1 variant that went through and took out the province, right? And then, now they're dealing with Delta and Lambda. That's going through. So this myth that you're going to get to herd immunity and then you're going to be okay. Not so. Getting your ass kicked only guarantees that you're going to get your ass kicked. It doesn't guarantee anything beyond that, right? And that's why I never liked this strategy. That's why I always thought it was a dumb strategy. If you look at the history of epidemics, sometimes when a new pathogen emerges, it takes decades to get to some sort of stable homeostasis with the human population, right? It just keeps it keeps mutating and adapting, and you think you're over it, and then another wave comes and people get sick again. So this is why I think we need a better strategy than that, and it's why I remain fundamentally optimistic about the vaccines. Although we're having issues with the vaccines, and I think we should probably talk about that too.
Well, I think Mayo Clinic. I forgot his name now, but he was on. I think I shared it with you, Doc. Herd immunity, 85 to 95% vaccination rate. That's what he's saying. To even think anything less is not smart. I did want to hit one question. Brian Ingalls is asking us to ask you about neutralizing antibodies mitigating spread from vaccinated individuals. Does that make sense? Because it doesn't make any sense to me.
But what's the question? Neutralizing antibodies?
Yeah, it's hold on, shucks. Oh my God.
Maybe I can respond.
It says
okay,
ask him about neutralizing antibodies, reducing the likelihood of spread by vaccinated individuals.
Oh, so I mean, so there's an issue with, if I'm understanding it correctly, with if you're vaccinated and you get a high level of antibody in your body after the vaccine, then will that reduce the transmission risk for the virus? And what we saw early on with the vaccines, when the vaccine was well matched to the circulating strain, like it was earlier this year, we saw a very nice reduction in transmission, as well as a nice reduction in severe disease. And now those things are decoupling a little bit. We're seeing more transmission amongst vaccinated people. And I myself, in taking care of COVID patients in the last couple of weeks during this big wave here, have seen vaccinated to vaccinated transmission. So the question is, how common is that, and how much of a problem is it? Well, fortunately, most of those cases are mild. So when we're seeing those breakthrough cases and those transmission cases, mostly what I'm seeing is like head colds. People are it's getting into the nasal mucosa, and we think because the inoculant is so high, Delta is such a high viral load, it's replicating in the nose, it's replicating in the throat. People are getting like a upper airway type infection. And then around day 3, day 4, most of them are beginning to control it because they were vaccinated. So they've got some memory B cells and other things that come online and protect them from getting, the bad pneumonia. What I'm seeing with unvaccinated Delta COVID is horrible viral pneumonia. I mean, just, x-rays that are just completely whited out on the sides. These people are tell. And we're not seeing that as much with the vaccinated. Really, I haven't seen it at all, the vaccinated. I'm sure there are examples of it in people that are maybe immunocompromised, but we're not seeing much of that. So, and if you look at the numbers, if you look at like testing, for example, we don't have really good breakdown on the day-to-day. We get those numbers, 600 people tested positive. It's hard to say what's going on with that, and it takes them a while to adjudicate the data there. But if you look like within testing systems, what we saw a few months ago was that almost everybody who was testing positive was unvaccinated, and it was very rare to see a vaccinated person that's positive. So almost all the positives coming back were unvaccinated. And now often we're seeing 5-10% of the test results that are positive amongst vaccinated people, which suggests to me that it's certainly more common, right? And then the question is, okay, well, how sick are those people? So that if you look at hospitalizations, which I think of as sort of a marker of sick, a few months ago, nobody who was vaccinated was being admitted to the hospital. And now it's maybe 10%, something like that, of the admissions are vaccinated. So, do the math quick in your head. 60% of the state is vaccinated, 40% is unvaccinated. 90% of the admissions are unvaccinated, roughly, right? That's where we're at right now. So, I mean, it's certainly protective, but is it blocking transmission like we want it to? I don't think so. And there's this classic equation, which one of the epidemiologists is probably better to explain it than me. I think Lee Attenberg, one of those guys. But you talk about herd immunity. Herd immunity is the equation is 1 minus 1 over R. So R is the number of people infected per case. If R is 5 for Delta, 1 minus 1 over 5. 1 minus 1/5 is 80%. So you'd roughly need to have 80% of people immune for a virus that's that contagious to go away. Okay, so then how many do you need to vaccinate? Well, you need to take that 80% and divide that by the efficacy of the vaccine in blocking transmission. And we don't know that number. We don't know exactly how well it blocks transmission. But let's assume it blocks at 50%. what's 0.8 divided by 0.5? Be like 1.6 or something. So you'd have to vaccinate 160% of the population in order to get the thing. Can't do. So I've been sending sort of smart ass emails to these guys saying, hey, I'm trying to vaccinate everybody I can, but I'm not going to get to 160% of YMAN because that's impossible. So that means we have to do other things too. We need a better vaccine that blocks transmission more effectively, right? And we need non-pharmaceutical interventions, mask wearing, social distancing, things like that. So I don't want to contradict the Mayo guy because he's a lot smarter than me. 85 to 90% would be way better than 60% in terms of reducing the hurt that we're feeling right now. It would make the hospital safer. It would make schools safer. It would reduce the amount of death and destruction and mayhem tremendously. I think that is what we should be targeting. But I think even if we got to 85 to 90%, all we're doing is giving the same shot that we were given against the original gangster strain that came out in January. There's still probably going to be some level of transmission. It might just be clusters here and there, but you're not going to completely get rid of it.
You know, I saw today Australia has been locked down for a while, and they're seeing a surge again. They're getting worried. I just saw it in the Australian newspaper. Thank you. I think it was Christine that sent it to me today. And it's not fake news. That's the real deal. It's happening as we speak. You know, I don't want to see a lockdown, Doc. And had we prepared, we knew this was, we should have known. I shouldn't say we knew, but we should have known. I mean, all of you knew. Everyone that's been on our show knew. Every guest that we've ever had came on, predicted what was going to happen. It was just, it is what it is. Had we implemented these safety protocols, like the gathering sizes and possibly bars and restaurants, you know, limiting the exposures in there, we could have reduced the numbers today. The numbers would have been drastically less if we had pre-tested visitors, went back to safe travels, what I call the unsafe travels, but their safe travel program. If we had re-implemented the pre-travel test, possibly a post-travel test, we would have brought the numbers way down and we could have avoided a total lockdown. At the rate we're going, as I'm watching and talking to people that I know that work in hospitals, there's no way we're going to be able to avoid another lockdown simply because we won't have the medical resources to take care of our patients. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, you know, and especially on the neighboring islands, you know, if it continues to grow like it has, you know, last week was a real tough week for me. I mean, I was COVIDing all over the place, and yeah, and the nurses are stressed out, the doctors. I mean, it's as much staffing as it is beds, you know, honestly, and that's a problem too because we can't fly in extra staff because the rest of the country is also getting hit, you know. We're having trouble transferring patients off island to bigger hospitals, you know, on Oahu because they're getting hit, right? So we're kind of on our own, and it doesn't take much to saturate limited hospital capacity. Now we can do some stuff. You know, we can stop doing elective surgeries. You know, we can close all of our clinics and move our nurses from clinic into the hospital. You know, we can turn our surgical ORs into extra rooms. You know, we can surge a bit, even in a small place like mine. And we have plans for that stuff. But you know, we can't keep up with an exponentially growing virus. So if it continues to blow up at the rate it's been blowing up, if it doesn't start to come down, then we break down. And even if all we have to do is disrupt care for the well for a month or two, that still has consequences. You know, my patients aren't getting as good care if my attention is entirely on COVID, right? So those are the things I worry about. And yeah, I agree. I think you know, Queens right now, I didn't look today to see how many COVID beds they have, but I think they peaked last year at over 100. I don't think they're quite there yet, but I think they're more than halfway to that at this point. And you know, once they get up to that, you know, 100 bed COVID bed number, they can't really function much beyond, right? And that's when the lockdown becomes inevitable. So because it's interesting, you know, when they say, oh, we're watching the situation, we're monitoring the situation. This gets back to my original point. We're monitoring the situation carefully. What does that mean? What the hell does that mean? Are you doing anything? No, you're not doing anything. So what does it mean that you're monitoring the situation carefully? I'll tell you, it means we're waiting for the hospital to fill up. I think that's what that means. And when we exceed hospital capacity, then we're going to lock down because there's nothing else we can do. Because, you know, even the political class needs to be able to use the hospital. So that's their only real red line as far as I can tell at this point. Now, if we had more people vaccinated, we would be much less likely to saturate that hospital capacity. And that's why I think we should be promoting vaccination everywhere we can. Because there's a big difference between having an epidemic of head colds and having an epidemic of viral pneumonia. I mean, it makes all the difference in the world, in terms of how many, the death, the destruction, the maiming, the long-term organ failure that people are going to suffer from afterwards. There's a world of difference between having a variant wave like the one that I hoped we had when we talked about variants months ago. I knew we were going to have one, but I was hoping we would have a relatively small one, a relatively mild one, and we would all be partly protected because we were vaccinated, and it would come through. We knew it was going to come through, but it was not inevitable that we would have a horrible epidemic of viral pneumonia like this, and that's what's happening. And I don't know what to say. It's like a spectacular own goal. It's like a bicycle kick into the wrong net. I don't know how else to describe it.
Hey, Doc. So when we start to talk about the efficacy rates of these vaccines,
yeah,
it's quite evident at this point it's becoming lower and lower. It's not holding up to the hype that it talked about in the beginning. Why do you think that is happening now? Is it more reports is coming out that's actually showing it's okay, but it's not performing as what one would expect in the first, in the first couple months that the vaccine hit the trail, right?
Yeah, I mean, vaccine scientists like Dworkin might be the best person to ask this to, but making a vaccine is hard, and it's especially hard to do it, when you have uncontrolled viral transmission happening all around the world. So I think the vaccine worked remarkably well against the virus it was created against, better than any of us expected it to. And it was so good, in fact, that it's continuing to work well at preventing severe disease, even though the virus has mutated tremendously since that time. But when you have hundreds of millions of cases around the world, and you haven't been able to get any of those people access to vaccine, and you haven't knocked down transmission, it's inevitably going to change. And I feel like we're a little bit slow in catching up because we're having this big debate in the United States right now about whether or not we should boost people, but we're talking about boosting people with the original Wuhan vaccine, which is probably better than nothing. But where's all the focus on anticipating where the virus is moving, right?
Right.
And where's the focus on making sure that when we roll out vaccination programs in other countries, that we're actually matching the vaccine to the strains that are circulating in those countries? I think if we really want to have success, we've got to be able to do that. And we may need to be able to use something like a polyvalent vaccine where we have it against a few different strains in one shot. We do that with pneumococcus, the bacteria. When you get a pneumococcal vaccine, it's 23 different flavors of pneumococcus in one shot. And we always joke, one of my mentors always joked, eventually we'll have like a 65 valent pneumococcal vaccine, and it'll come in like a turkey base. It'll be so big, But you can do more than one strain in a vaccine. And the mRNA shots are new, so nobody's rushing into trying things that haven't been tried before. Everybody wants to get safety data and stuff like that and show that it works and it's safe. But I think we're a little bit behind the virus. You see the CDC. Sometimes, the way they talk, I'm like, okay, you're reacting to where this thing was in May, not where it's going to be in October. So that we need to be a little bit more nimble.
Yeah, you mentioned Dr. Kim. He was just appointed to the cabinet, the executive cabinet of the government of South Korea as a COVID specialist. And he has made it very clear that this is a worldwide, until we get these vaccines out across the world, it's going to be very difficult to get over it, because these things travel, these things move. We've seen it. I mean, Lambda was where was it, in Peru? Now it's in America. It's just a matter of time before it gets here. And again, like you talk about, where's the planning for that? What for me, it seems like there's a lot of hope in our strategy. There's a lot of hope that it's like diarrhea, that that it'll go away. With that, even if I don't have my medicine, even if I don't have my Pepto-Bismol or my Imodium, that after a day or two, you wake up in the morning and whoa, my diarrhea is gone. Thank you. That's kind of how the sense I have is a lot of our decision makers are hoping that tomorrow we'll have 200 cases and the day after we'll have 100 and the day after we'll have 30 and it's not going to happen. And as much of the information that has been put out there by the experts that have been warning us, it just, like you said, Doc, it just doesn't seem like we're monitoring. Exactly, man. What are you monitoring? What are you waiting for? How many deaths is it going to take? How many hospitalizations? My concern, I was talking to Charlie earlier, was that when with the amount of people that can possibly be infected by one infected person, right? I've heard upwards of 9, but let's say 4 or 5. Let's just say 1, and let's just say 600 people went out and infected 600 people. Now your hospitals are full. Now the government pulls the trigger, said, whoop, lockdown. The lockdown's not going to stop that additional 600 or 1,200 or 1,800 people that were infected prior to the lockdown from going to the hospital. Then what are you going to do? Doc, what are you going to do at your hospital if your 4 ICU beds are full and you got 3 people in a waiting room that needs ICU? What would you do?
Yeah.
Really, that's a real world question. What, we had Miskovich on the show last week, and he talked about a patient from the Big Island got medevac to Oahu, threw him in an ambulance, got diverted to Castle because Straub and Queens didn't have room. So what are we doing? You get 25 or 30 more patients that needs help, and we're full. What do you do?
Yeah, no, that's when you start to see the case fatality rate skyrocket, right? And that's why that case fatality rate is a moving target. If everybody can get really excellent care, we can keep it low. But again, I mean, this is still the thing that shocks me. People say, well, my chance of dying is like less than 1% if I get COVID. Okay, that's assuming you get really excellent medical care, which you're not interested in regards to the vaccine, right? And what does that excellent medical care consist of? You get admitted to the hospital, right? You get put on oxygen because you got viral pneumonia. We give you all kinds of drugs, most of which are being used on an emergency basis, and we don't have a lot of experience using with this disease. You're getting immune suppressive medicines like dexamethasone. You're getting this antiviral drug remdesivir that we don't even know if it works. The WHO published a study and told us to stop using it. It's the only thing we got based on one little study, that was done last year. So we're using that on you. We're using IL-6 inhibitors, which are immune suppressive medicines that are being repurposed. I'm looking up these articles on these crazy treatments, and the people who didn't want to get vaccinated, they want all this stuff. They're just fine getting all of these experimental treatments, some of which are horribly immunosuppressive treatments, and then you don't do well. Okay, so you get a nasal flow cannula, you get intubated, you're put on a breathing machine, right? And I haven't had one person not want any of those things. Everybody comes in and they go, oh yeah, doc, give me the dexamethasone, give me the remdesivir, give me the tocilizumab. Yeah, definitely intubate me. I want to be intubated. I want to die a slow, horrible death over 3 or 4 weeks. But I didn't get the shot because that was too fast. That one there wasn't quite enough data on that for me, right? And this makes no sense at all. It's crazy. And it's crazy making for us. It's very frustrating for us. Because we end up doing stuff that's pretty horrendous to people, and it doesn't work that well, frankly. And even if we get people through, they're damaged. They're really jacked up from it. They got acute lung injury, they got renal failure, they got all kinds of problems. They got transaminase elevations from liver injury. Unbelievable stuff. So it boggles my mind that nobody trusts me on the vaccine, but they trust me blindly on all the other stuff I do, which is horrible. and I just want to reach out to people. If you're out there and you're not vaccinated, listen, I understand it's scary to put a needle in your arm. I get it. There's like a visceral fear there, especially when we talk about kids. I feel it too. But I as a doctor, I'm here to protect the town. That's my job, and I like my job, right? And all the other doctors in my hospital, whether it's the chief of staff, the emergency room doctors, we're here to protect the town. So if we're asking you to do this because of what we're seeing, trust us a little bit. at least more than you trust somebody on YouTube, some YouTube doctor. We're not saying it because we want to control you. We're saying it because we want to protect the town. And I think, we need a little bit more social cohesion. We really do. It's killing us, this lack of cohesion and this distrust.
Well, there's one thing that I really sense, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. That is, there is so much saturation at this point of good, sound advice from people, doctors, who's on the front line, like yourself, who's dealing with this day in and day out. And there seems to be this challenge for some reason, for whatever reason. It's because I come from a part of a country that we don't believe in this stuff. Okay. But now you're in a part of the country that it's uncontrolled. It's moving fast. And yet you still try to hold that same beliefs from the country that you just came from. How do you deal with those kind of people, especially if you're trying to tell them, let me give you the facts here, and let me tell you what the end result is. I'm not going to tell you if you should get real seriously ill on the back end, if I'll be able to bring you out of it or not. I can only do my best, right? And yet people will still run that challenge and say, well, the odds are I can get run over by stepping off a sidewalk. Yeah. And I'm saying, but we know this thing is deadly. Why are you trying to, it's almost as if, like you're a little kid and you want to play with the fish in a pond and they're telling you, oh, but the fish is poisonous. And you still want to play with the fish in a pond. That's what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's frustrating. I mean, I notice, like, when I think about it in the abstract, I get very frustrated. When I talk to individual people, I'm often a lot more empathetic. And I think that's probably the way to do it. Every person has their own reasons, and sometimes it's just fear, right? And we shouldn't judge people for being afraid. A lot of people are being captured by misinformation. The propaganda is very slick. And one of the things that they do is they trot out a doctor. So, and if you think about it, that's not terribly surprising, right? Because there's how many doctors are there in the country? There's got to be over, several 100,000 doctors and a couple million people with PhDs. So you can find somebody with seemingly sterling credentials, say almost any crazy thing you want. And with the internet, it's now very easy to find people like that, right? So a lot of times now the propaganda, they find a doctor or they find a PhD, and they bring this person out and they make a big fuss over this person's credentials. And then the person presents himself as sort of a maverick. That's one of the tricks. They say, well, the authorities don't want me to tell you the truth, but I'm going to tell you the truth, right? I'm a maverick. I'm looking out for the common man. And they're trying to shut me down, right? And they sort of build this narrative. And and if they're well-spoken and they're smart, they can be very, very good at it, right? And I can think of a few examples. And the result is that we have more people sort of being taken in by it, right? Because it's not just crazy people ranting about aluminum and stuff like that. The level of propaganda. Right? Like, I saw an article, I'll give you one example, that looked gorgeous. It came in a PDF file, and it had formatting and color, and it looked just like an infectious disease journal article, right? And it was written by a doctor. And I forget the name of the article, something like the Society of Micro and something. But the name of the journal was almost exactly the same as a journal that I've read as an infectious disease doctor. But one word was different in the journal title. And I was like, oh, that's a little funny. And then I'm reading the article. And one of the tricks they like to do is they make a non-falsifiable claim. And you know what I mean by non-falsifiable? They say something that you can't possibly disprove. So they'll say something like, the vaccine might cause prion disease. Right. Well, prion disease takes like 20 or 30 years to happen. Right. So I can't prove the vaccine doesn't cause prion disease because I'd have to wait 30 years. So we'd have to suffer 1,000 deaths a day for 30 years in order to disprove the possibility that the vaccine causes prion disease. Right. But they don't get any real evidence that it causes prion disease. They're just sort of asserting that. When you look at the references, you see the guy's referencing himself, or he's referencing some animal model somewhere that somebody came up with. So it's very thin. It falls apart when you inspect it carefully, but on the surface, it looks super slick. And if somebody just reads the first paragraph or two, they're terrified. They're like, oh my God, I want to get Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. I'm going to go insane, if I take this vaccine. And I can't disprove it because I haven't waited 30 years, right? So this is the kind of tricks that they like to do. And it's gotten very slick. And all I can say to people is, I am the doctor in your town. I am seeing what people are coming in with. I'm seeing people come in with out of control viral pneumonia who have not been vaccinated. That's what I'm seeing. I see it all day, every day, right? We've given tens of thousands of shots. We had a couple of people stay overnight to be monitored for allergic reactions. That's what I'm seeing, right? So why don't you let me help you and turn off, Dr. Jerkhead on YouTube, because he's not trying to help you. And I don't know why these people are motivated. I think part of it is that they're motivated by clicks, because we're in this attention economy, right? So if I become a maverick anti-vaxxer doctor, I can get a lot of attention, especially with my credential. I'm an infectious disease doctor, and I want to tell you how Anthony Fauci's lying to you. I could go big. I could become very famous doing that, right? So there's an attention thing that they're getting, and they monetize it. They get subscribers, Patreon accounts, all kinds of things, right? So they're actually quite conflicted, some of these people, and they don't acknowledge that in any way, right? So what I tell my patients is, don't be the sucker. There's always been snake oil salesmen in American medicine. It goes back to Mark Twain. I mean, this is as old as America, right? The snake oil, and this is the modern form of snake oil. And I maybe not everybody likes me. Okay, talk to Dr. James Madison, who's one of the hospitals. Talk to Anne Haliakala, who's an excellent ER doctor in her ER. Talk to Crystal Hammer, who's a tremendous, compassionate internal medicine. They'll all say what I'm saying. So you got to talk to the doctors in your town and trust that they're trying to look out for you, just like the firefighters and the cops and everybody else.
Well, sometimes I get really, I had this experience in a hotel, working security at Kapalua Bay Hotel on Maui.
Yeah.
Before I joined the police department. And I remember there was an incident where we called doctors on call. They respond to the hotel. But there was a doctor on the floor. And so when we got to the room, the family said, oh, there's a doctor here. I said, oh, okay, can I get your name? And they said, Dr. So-and-so. So something told me to ask the doctor, and your specialty is? He goes, oh, yeah, I'm cosmetology. And I went, okay. And the person was deathly ill. I said, we have a doctor. He goes, oh, no, but I'm a doctor. Okay. I said, well, I guess, if you're deathly ill, we at least can beautify you in the meantime. So I just, those kind of things is what drives me batty. Those kind of things drive me batty.
Yeah.
Okay, Mel.
No, I was just gonna say, first of all, we don't monetize our show. So I would die if I got a check from YouTube or whatever. I mean, I know Charlie and I would donate it someplace, but there was this guy today. He claims to be some kind of occupational therapist. Did a YouTube video, right? I believe it was right outside Honolulu, someplace, and he's vomiting this information about how 37 people died in where he works. In his unit, 37 people died from the vaccine. That they're moving old people into the COVID unit without COVID, and they're dying and counting them as COVID so they can make more money. These people are dangerous. Yeah. These people are going to get people killed. And, that's the problem with this freedom of speech and the social media. And like you said, Doc, there's so many sources out there of valid information. They've got programmed now. It has become the us versus them, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. And that, I believe, is part of the government's fault, because they've put it out that way. Rather than say, hey, we're going to have a testing requirement, right? We're going to have a testing requirement for everybody, because you can pass the virus even if you're vaccinated. So now, if you're vaccinated, you don't got to test. But if you're not, well, in some cases, you cannot participate in youth sports. You cannot come to school. You got to take a test or be vaccinated, as opposed to just saying, hey, anyone can pass the virus. We're going to test everybody. And I think this now it's almost irreversible. Now it's become this battle, and they're searching YouTube, finding what validates their agenda and posting them up, and guys that we don't even know, people that like you said, dog, you could put up a YouTube right now, and you get a lot of clicks, you get a lot of views, and probably make some money if you went and did you went against the grain. And that's what's happening, and it's shameful. And I think that's what e-gay folks are watching. They're watching the wrong YouTube videos. They're not watching the right videos. It's a shame.
They're not watching you guys.
They're watching, but we just pissed them off, and then the thing is, they crossed the line. They made commitments. They assured people of certain things. They like I was talking to my daughter tonight. They overpromised and underdelivered, and now the ego gets in the way, and they cannot come back and say, you know what, we made an error in judgment, and we're here today to clear up, and make it right. They won't do that because they're politicians. And it's a shame, because now it's us against them, and it's going to be a battle that's going to go on for a long time.
The testing, in terms of what we could do practically, I still think in the long term, the only good way out of this that doesn't involve major amounts of death and major disruption is a vaccination program that gets to in the short run, that gets to the vast majority of the state. We need to get to 80 to 90% of the state in the next few months. I mean, we need to, because that's what's going to prevent hundreds of more people from dying and thousands of more people from being extremely sick. And that's what's going to prevent the school year from getting completely screwed up, and other things that we care about from getting completely screwed up. But beyond that immediate goal, we need a vaccination strategy going into the next year that gets to the entire world and that takes into account the variants. We need to be faster at this, and we need to take advantage of some of these other tools. So, the testing is really one of the things that's been lost in all of this. We had a local company last year that wanted to make rapid antigen tests for the state, and there was an opportunity to form a private-public partnership, right? Or we could have formed a private-public partnership with a company that wasn't in Hawaii, if that company didn't work out, for example. But we needed to come up with something, and had we done that a year ago, say, we might now have millions of rapid antigen tests available to use, right? How nice would that be? So what's happening with schools right now is public schools aren't getting access to testing. But what do you think is happening in private schools? They're testing the crap out of everyone, right? They're going to stay open, right? So this has become a luxury item. And despite the fact that we spent billions of dollars, on our pandemic response, we never got our act together to protect the public schools. And the likelihood that there's going to be disruption is extremely high, right? So I think that was a big missed opportunity. And I tried to raise awareness of it on a few occasions. Last year, I tried again earlier this year when I was still invited to some of the mayor meetings. And I just got the cold shoulder over and over and over again. I don't understand this stubborn hostility to testing when we know that it's a good way to keep things open. It's not a perfect solution. The perfect solution is to get rid of the virus, right? But that's going to take a while. And this allows us to do some things that are really important, like keep our kids in school. And it hasn't happened. So I think every politician should be asked about that. Why didn't you get it organized to do rapid antigen testing for school kids? Why are we going into the school year without a really good plan in place? Why was the plan released the week before the school year started? Why did it not include testing, right? Why isn't there a HEPA filter in every room?
What is the byproduct of testing? What is the byproduct of testing?
The byproduct, you mean the result?
What's the result of testing?
I mean, you got to chase down the information, right?
Wouldn't more testing provide more cases?
Yeah, right. I see what you're saying.
I'm telling you, it's from day one, and I'm so convinced about it. I have no shame or no fear to say it. From day one, it was the objective of this state, of the leaders in this state, to open up this state to tourism. They don't even try to hide it. And if they tested more, we would get more cases. It'd be very hard it's already hard. The people are already screaming and yelling and fighting. But early on, before we got to this point, it'd be very difficult to convince the public that we're going to open up the state if we had high numbers. And that's why the testing was reduced, in my opinion. You cannot tell me we don't have resources to test. That's a crock. That is.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think to zoom in on that psychology a little bit, you have to think about it at an organizational level, right? So let's say I'm a business and I would like the rapid antigen test everybody, including my vaccinated employees, right? But my vaccinated employees are more likely to be asymptomatic, right? So now I'm in a situation where I'm sending people home who are asymptomatic. And do I have somebody else to fill that shift, right? So it's easier for me to just not look unless someone's coughing on me than it is to find out, oh boy, that person's an asymptomatic transmitter, right? And I think you see this at every level. You see it with schools, you see it in healthcare organizations, you see it at businesses. It's the sort of we'd rather not know kind of way of thinking about it, right? Because we're not necessarily well equipped to deal with the consequences of knowing, right? It's not just that it embarrasses us; it's that we don't actually know how to respond to that. What do we do when we lose that person for 2 weeks, right? And a lot of places are running very tightly staffed, you know. So I'm seeing this in healthcare. I think healthcare workers should be getting rapid antigen tests all the time, and increasingly we are. You know, I've been getting a lot of rapid antigen tests myself as I go between different places, but it only started happening recently. You know, I went through the first year of the pandemic seeing COVID patients and not getting rapid antigen tested, you know, and it arguably it should have been going on since it became available more than a year ago.
You know, sometimes there's when we talk about testing, it almost seems as if, you know, and I'll give you an example what I'm getting at. When we first started off at the inception of this pandemic, right? It seems like maybe the number was between 1 and 150 they tested. So you get a hit of 75. Then the numbers, the highest they got was 300. It's almost as if they opened up the treasure chest and said, okay, we have 300 tests, let's go for it. Could they have gone more? Sure, they could have. Now, they have the numbers up to 600 that they're going to test. And what they're finding is positivity rates up in 600 count, right? So nobody bothers to ask, okay, lab, try 800 and let's see where we're at. Because why? The numbers will be just too god darn staggering for anyone to handle. It's like the end of the world is near, right?
Yeah.
And so I keep on looking at it and I keep on saying, hey, just put it out there. You know, what is that number going to be? If you put 1,000, you hit 1,000, at least we know we're in a tsunami. It's coming, right?
Yeah.
But at least we're going to be prepared. At least we're going to try to prepare ourselves. Right now, they keep a tight lid on it. It says, okay, you know what? 600 is good. There's probably 1,800, but let's break it up into thirds. It's more palatable that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but we know from the test positivity that
Yeah.
that we're undercounting, right? You know,
Right.
What's our state test positivity? 6-7%. I didn't see what it was today. I think Big Island's like 7-8%, right?
Right.
So we're having thousands of cases a day. There's just no doubt. You know, we haven't that number's not the one getting printed in the paper, but we know because the test positivity is so high that we're dramatically undercounting. So, you know, we're
Right.
living in a situation now where thousands of people every day are getting sick, right? And I did a quick back of the envelope calculation for the Big Island. We're having over 100 cases a day, but with a really high test positivity rate, 7-8%. And I'm thinking the real number might be 5 times higher than that. There are 100,000 people on the Big Island. You know, if we're having 500, 600 cases a day, that means every day, you know, 0.5% or something like that of the population is getting infected, right? I mean, that's crazy. That's really crazy, right? People stay contagious for 10 days or whatever. So it's a completely out of control epidemic. And I might have mentioned this before, but what I was seeing, you know, a couple of months ago was everything was travel related, right? And we've talked about travel a lot. I don't think we kept any of the variants out. It's obvious we didn't keep the variants out. The political narratives about how successful our program were continue to be very attractive to the newspapers. But we know we didn't keep the variants out, right? So it obviously wasn't good enough to do that. And the cases I was seeing a couple of months ago were almost all travel related, right? And not necessarily tourism, but travel, right? And now what I'm seeing is just community spread for the most part. Still some travel for sure, but mostly just people getting it news. So it came in. We've got Delta now 80-90%. It's highly contagious and it's just ripping through. And I don't think anybody should be confident that it's going to completely go away. Why would it go away? It'll do what it's done in other countries. People will, on their own, stop going out more. the numbers will drop off a little bit, it'll plateau, and we'll be smoldering along with some middle level of transmission, half crippled by it, and then we'll get hit by the next wave of something. And the only thing
Right.
that's going to alter this is really aggressive public health and really aggressive vaccination, which is why I support those things. I just think we need to pull together and win, guys. I mean, I don't know why it's so controversial to win. You know, we should really just try it. You know, and the politicians, if you're a politician out there, try winning. It's actually popular. You know, and you're going to piss some people off. You're going to have somebody standing in their underpants yelling about their freedom. But the vast majority of us like winning, and I'm just shocked at how unpopular winning has become. It seems like
Right.
a sure sign of our degeneracy as a culture. You know, that we can't get our act together enough to beat this thing down. We know what we need to do to beat it down. We just need to be cohesive enough to do it.
Well, I think the politicians, they make decisions based on what they believe will help them at the next election. I think that's just the nature of that beast. I mean, that's just how that game works. I will tell you this, Doc. I have been keeping track. See, Kauai does real-time number reporting, real-time tracking. I think we're the only county that does it. So I've kept track for the last, I think it's now 18 days since we started the real heavy spikes on Kauai. And on Kauai, as of up until today, our travel-related cases, 54%. Yesterday, we had 12 cases, 12 travel-related, not tourist-related, travel-related. So we cannot, they don't release whether it's a visitor or a local. My point is that on Kauai, and I don't think we're much different than any of the other islands, on Kauai, and I can say this with all certainty because this comes straight out of the Department of Health, our travel-related cases, positive cases of COVID-19 over the last 2.5 weeks, going on 3 weeks, is 54%. So it is an issue. It is a real issue. That's using real numbers. That's not using the shit that they give you, that cryptic crap that the state try to put out on the news. This is the real numbers. That's segregated by travel, non-travel, community spread, and so forth. So it is a concern, I think. And then there's also this. Remember when we had majority of visitor travel-related cases, right? That's when visitors were getting tested. That's when visitors were getting on your island. They tested every single one of them coming off that plane. On Kauai, we had the 4-day. You had a quarantine. You had bubbles. We got tested. We tested our visitors. These guys aren't getting tested. They're coming in. They're staying for their 7 days, and they're leaving. Unless they get sick, like today, I think we had 3 visitor cases. The only way they're gonna get tested is they got sick, and sick enough to go to the doctor. So I think the whole 2% visitor thing, I don't think that's accurate. I still think the majority of the cases are returning residents. I'm not gonna dispute that, but I think we're dangerously underestimating the number of visitors that are bringing in a virus. That's just
there was always an issue with the Safe Travels program in that, you put aside the one testing, you did a pre-travel test 3 days before, and there were always issues with that. And D. Miller, who's my friend, will probably never agree on this. But yeah, I would just tell him, D, I have to trust my own lying eyes because I'm seeing the cases when they pop up. People would get a test, and then they would go party, and then they would get on the plane. Or they would get infected during travel, or maybe they were just in the latency period. So I always thought having a second test would have been better. But even if you put aside that whole issue of one test or 2 tests, there were always a bunch of pukas in the travel scheme, right? And the biggest puka was that we didn't have a real serious, vigorous way of enforcing the quarantine, right? So if you're not enforcing the quarantine, seriously enforcing the quarantine, then people can just opt to quarantine, and then they're quote unquote quarantining, but they're not actually quarantining. They're making exceptions, right? And then there were also all of the official allowed exceptions, all of the critical infrastructure workers that were bouncing around, right? And we know that those guys were getting infected at a certain rate. So there were multiple problems with the program, and only one of those problems had to deal with the most controversial issue, which was 1 test versus 2. There were other big problems with it, right? Now, that's not to say that I think it was completely useless. I think compared to other states in the United States, having some system in place was probably better than having no system in place. But I don't doubt at all we had a lot of travel-related disease, particularly in the winter and the early spring. And I don't doubt that we're still seeing it. Lee Attenberg has done some good analysis of this, where when you have such a contagious variant like this, if somebody brings it in, even if it's only 1 out of 100 people, or 1 out of 1,000 people, say, it's going to then ripple out, and you can use that R and do some math and figure out what the consequences are, right? Depending on how good your public health is. Right now, our public health is not controlling anything, so we're getting a steady stream of input of virus from outside, and we're not controlling what's already inside. I think that's what you're seeing. So yeah, and it's certain you got to do both. You got to do both.
Well, one of the things that, and I apologize because I'm in a discussion with one of our viewers, Jody. Her son-in-law, Sean, is a COVID survivor, and we had chatted or texted a while back about bringing him on the show, and he's actually available tonight. So if you guys would indulge me, I would ask him. I'm going to ask him to come on and share his story, because I think that's the story we got to tell. I can't believe they're going to give away $500 gift coupons from McDonald's. The next 10,000 people that get vaccinated going in a drawing for a $500 McDonald's gift card or whatever, or another this, or a trip to Vegas. Yeah, go send our people right where the virus is growing. Rather than that, let's share with the people the stories about COVID. They're not saying scare them and threaten them, but let them know what's going to happen. So just bear with me while I send the link. I'm having a little bit of problem. And Doc, feel free. I know I want to respect your time as well. On here.
I think it's really helpful to hear from people. And it's also helpful to hear if people have particular fears about the vaccine. I'm happy to answer questions if there's specific things that they've heard. I mean, at this point, I've read a lot of the conspiracy theories about the vaccine. So I've gone down a few of these rabbit holes myself just to see what some of my patients are encountering. And if it's helpful to people, I'm happy to talk about it. I don't judge anybody for having heard something and being worried about it. Like I said, the quality of the propaganda has gotten so good. There's a rabbit hole for anybody now, no matter what your proclivities are. And what I'm noticing in Hawaii is most people are not going down like the far right rabbit holes. Most people are going down more the left of center rabbit holes. So there's the anti-corporate rabbit holes, and there's propaganda to match every personality type. And this is why we need to stop looking into our phones, and we need to start talking to each other, I think, to get past this.
Yeah. Hold on here. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so this is going to be Sean. I'm hoping he can get in. I know Charlie. Let me just real quick, and I know you know about this, Doc, but I want to tell a real quick story because, we have been on this journey for a long time. And, it all started a year and a half ago. Charlie lost his brother. He brought us on the journey with him. So that in and of itself, I think brought it home for a lot of us, made it personal. Even though we didn't know his brother, we knew Charlie. And we felt for Charlie. Along the way, other cases. I lost a first cousin to COVID, and all of these cases, all of these incidents, reach home. It touches your heart. Well, I'll tell a real quick story before I bring Sean on. Is my daughter, who was not vaccinated. We have been trying to convince her to take the vaccine for a while. Can you imagine? Me as your dad. And after Matt Funga passed away, the football player on Oahu, I texted her and I stopped bothering her. My son finally got his shot because he got a little scared. They both live in Oregon. But my daughter, I texted my daughter and I said, we lost another friend, another healthy guy, football player, former UH player, unvaccinated and dead. please get your vaccine. I love you. That was on Friday or so. Sunday, she had planned to go get the vaccine. So she got up in the morning, she went to work with the intention of getting her vaccine in the afternoon, and then she got a call about 11 o'clock from someone that she had come in contact with a few days prior. He had tested positive. She went to the doctor, urgent care, got tested. My daughter's positive. My daughter has COVID. She was kind of laughing it off because she didn't have any symptoms. Well, you know what? She woke up this morning and she's got the full symptoms. She's got it. We're scared shitless. Fever, body ache. She said the worst she's ever felt in her life. And I bring this up not for sympathy, but she was a day away from getting the vaccine. And right before we came on, I had her get an oxygen meter, and her oxygen was down to 91. Told her to call the ER. So I'm assuming everything is working because my wife didn't come in and tell me, but it's more than likely she didn't tell her go to ER and get some oxygen. And again, I don't say that for any other reason that she was that close from getting a vaccine. 2 weeks ago, she could have got the vaccine. And let me tell you right now, she's going to get the vaccine now. She has absolutely no doubt. So again, I share that because it hits home, it gets close. And that's why I want to bring in Sean right now to share his story. I have never met Sean. I have never spoken to Sean. Well, thank Jody for, that's Jody. Hang on, Jody, we cannot hear you yet, Jody.
Okay, Mel. Thanks, Mel. And this is Sean's little face right there. Here,
Hello, Sean.
Okay. Hi.
Aloha.
Aloha, Mel. Finally here I am. Okay. Sean. Oops. There he is. Okay.
Guys,
Hello.
now would be a good time to share. Press the share button, people. I'm gonna put Sean on the screen so we get to see Sean. What's up, Sean? How you doing, buddy?
I'm hanging in there still. Hanging in there. I'm about a good year and a half out on having had COVID and pneumonia, and was in a coma for almost 2 months. And I don't know. I'm not sure. My my mother-in-law was just like, "Oh, you should talk to these people," and I'm like, I mean, I'm willing. I'm not sure exactly. Like I heard a little bit of your show on and off because she was trying to hook up with it. I'm not sure what you guys want. What do you want to hear from me?
Well, Sean, it's obvious that you're on oxygen.
Yes, and not 24/7. It's like on and off. Like, I mean, I won't die if I don't have it on, but it helps my heart not have to work so hard and stuff. And sometimes I really do just need it.
Now, Sean, when did you contract the virus?
Somewhere around January of 2020, before anybody, not this January, the last January, before anybody was even talking about it.
So you had the original strain, not even the Delta. No.
It's way back. I didn't know what I had. I mean, really, what happened was I was feeling very like off. I hadn't even had the flu or the flu vaccine or anything, or even had a freaking temperature for about 10 years. No, joke. And I was like feeling off, and then I was like, God, do I have a fever? I'm like, I didn't even remember what it was like to have a fever. Like, that's how long it had been since I had felt really sick. And I took my temperature and it was 103.5. And I was like, okay, yeah, I need to get this checked out. So, excuse me. So the next day I went to like a med clinic, like whatever. I'm on Medi-Cal here in California. And I just thought, I was like, hi guys, I guess I got the flu. I haven't had the flu in forever. And so they gave me the test, and they were like, well, it's not a flu that we know. Like it was like the paperwork and everything that was like unknown infectious virus. And I was like, okay. And they were like, just, go home and take Tylenol for your fever and drink fluids, but we can't give you Tamiflu or anything because it's a virus that we don't know. And I was like, okay. So I went home. I just drank juice and water and stuff. And my God, sorry. My temperature went down in probably just a couple of 2 or 3 days, but I just felt like I had like a hot poker in my chest, and I just was coughing to the point of dry heaving, and I didn't know anything about it at the time, but I couldn't smell anything, I couldn't taste anything. And after about 10 days, I was just so like, I couldn't barely walk down. I was walking down the hall, and it would be like, I'm just felt dizzy. And I just figured it was just part of having the flu or whatever. And so then I went back to the same clinic, and they put the pulse oximeter on me, and the girl was like, hold on, and like grabbed one of the other nurses, because she was like, this can't be right, and put another pulse oximeter on me, and I was in the 50s. They're like,
Wow.
they were like, so I had like, and I wasn't breathing heavy. Like I didn't realize that I had no oxygen going on, which is like just another thing that you see with COVID is that like inability for your body to like, what's it called? God, I can't think of the name of it. Well, your body doesn't even realize that it's like lacking the oxygen. Like I was just like, oh, I feel a little dizzy. And they were like, call 911. They put oxygen on me. I was immediately picked up by an ambulance and rushed to the hospital, and they were like trying to do all this stuff to get my oxygen up, and just nothing really worked. I had, after 10 days of COVID, I had developed pneumonia, and so yeah, I just really couldn't. I don't remember that much after I got into the hospital. Like within 2 days, I was in a coma. I mean, I had a trach, everything. I was on a ventilator for like almost 2 months. They just didn't even know. They were like taking biopsies and stuff. My lung collapsed multiple times. It was just, and I was like, I didn't even, and I woke up from the coma just about a week or so before they really like, I was seeing it on TV there at the hospital and stuff. They were talking about this like disease, and they thought that I was vaping. And I'm like, I never vaped. I mean, I smoked. I was a smoker, but
Cigarettes.
Yeah.
They weren't
Yeah,
able to tell you. They weren't able to tell you what was going on, huh? Despite all of that, all that stuff they did to you, they still weren't able to give you a clear diagnosis.
No, they were not.
Hey, Sean.
They
Sean,
sent it to the Mayo Clinic. They sent samples of my stuff to the Mayo Clinic. nobody can. I am still not categorized as a COVID patient. They say that I was vaping, and I'm like, vaping, acute respiratory distress, pneumonia, blah 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 blah. I have 50%, just a little bit over 50% lung function. I've had multiple lung function tests with my pulmonologist, who was one of the only people who even thought I was gonna survive this whole thing. Like, my parents flew out from Georgia, and they were like bringing priests in. I mean, they're like, oh, he's not gonna like live through the night. Like, my I was down to like 2 beats per minute, and then I would shoot up to 200 beats per minute.
Got a blood clot?
I had blood clots. They had to put some thing in my leg to maybe trap a blood clot that would go to my heart, because they want to have me have a pulmonary embolism, whatever the hell. I don't know all the.
Hey, Sean, that's Dr.
I know I'm
Dworkin.
rambling.
No, please. I want you to ramble. I just want to let you know that's Dr. Dworkin. That's not Mark Zuckerberg. That is actually Dr. Dworkin. He's
Not nearly as wealthy as Mark Zuckerberg.
He's an infectious disease specialist. He's one of our great friends, and he's on the Big Island of Hawaii. So I just wanted to let you know that this guy was a doctor, and he wants to hear your story as well, because he's intrigued. So all of
you can't call me on the phone, Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't even remember most of what happened. Like, I was in a coma, and they were like taking biopsies. My lung collapsed multiple times. They didn't know what it was. They had no idea what it was. Because
Sean, was that the most frustrating thing for you? Like, what was the most frustrating about it? Was it the pain of being in the hospital?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, it was awful to be in the hospital for so long. I mean, but I had so many, I was like, literally, my pulmonologist said that I was on more than twice the legal limit of fentanyl at some point, because they were trying to calm my systems down. I was like, everything was it was like a tornado in my body.
Every time they turned him, his heart rate would go through the roof.
Did I do something?
Yeah.
You're there.
Calling it ICU
Delirium.
Or it sounds like, from what you were describing, Sean, can I ask you a question? It sounds like in the beginning you had kind of a febrile illness, and then did I understand that right? That it seemed to be going away a little bit, but then it got worse again with the breathing. So
no, never got better.
You mentioned that you had some fever, and then it seemed to, at the very beginning of your story, you said it started with like a fever.
Oh, it felt like the flu.
It felt like the flu.
It felt like it was the closest thing that I could approximate it to, because literally had not been sick in any like detrimental or any way that like debilitated me in probably about 10 to 12 years.
And then later on, what did you notice next? Did it begin to settle in the chest? Is that when you went into what was it that brought you into the hospital?
Well, I got really weak, and I was just, I literally felt like there was a poker in my chest. Like, it was just like hot, and I would just cough until I was like, I couldn't even think or anything. Like, I would just be coughing so hard that like I felt like I was gonna pass out, and then I would start like dry heaving and stuff. And that went on for about 10 days. And I watched like about 7 seasons of Cheers. Well, it was like, because I didn't even know what else to do. I just had Netflix on, I had Cheers on, something from my childhood. And I was like, it kind of like made me feel good. But I was like, and my girlfriend was not around. She was working for Bernie Sanders campaign and stuff. So I was basically by myself in a room for like about 10 or 11 days. And it was just, I mean, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to ride this out. But it was just like, this is weird. And I now can't really function at all. Like I would have to stop halfway to the bathroom and sit down because I just felt exhausted and whatnot. But I wouldn't really be breathing hard. Like it wasn't like my body didn't realize that it was that I didn't have oxygen. It was just like, oh, you're just like a little dizzy. And it's like, well, that happens when you get, the flu.
And then your face was like white and your lips were blue.
Yeah,
She
And
says
sounds
like,
like it sounds like you were having trouble getting oxygen into your blood. We see this
Oh,
often
yeah.
with viral illnesses, and we see it with COVID, but we also see it with influenza, where people get a flu-like syndrome. That's when the virus is first going into their body. And then they begin to turn the corner on that. Your immune system kicks in, you begin to control it, you tend to be less achy, less febrile. But oftentimes there's a double hit. And that's why I was curious about that part of it, because then there's a second phase that comes. And that's often what lands people in the hospital. And I've seen
all
this
the
with,
phases.
I've seen this with COVID over and over again, where they're home with the fevers and the chills and the aches for several days, and then they start to feel better. And then around day 8, they tend to get worse again, and that's when they end up in the hospital. And that's the trajectory with these viral illnesses. And sometimes there's a secondary pneumonia that gets on top of it. Sometimes it's just the immune system in the lung.
Oh yeah,
you know?
no, I had pneumonia twice. I had pneumonia initially, and I was in the ICU,
Yeah.
and I was on coma and all that, and then that got resolved, and I was actually doing pretty good, and I was I was no longer on a ventilator. I just was on some very mild
He went to subacute.
subacute. I don't know.
Yeah,
I was
he went to subacute when he was discharged, and this is in March. They sent him to a subacute facility where they fed him too fast, and he got aspiration pneumonia, and then he fell out of bed.
That's the fourth time I thought I was gonna die.
And so they had to send him back to the hospital. So that was the second round of
Oh,
pneumonia.
no, they had to take me in the emergency room to an
Did
actual
you hear me
hospital.
okay, Dr. Dworkin?
Yeah, thank you guys for
Hey,
telling
Sean,
the story.
hey, Sean,
Yeah.
what's the prognosis, if you don't mind me asking? What, I mean,
Well, at this point, I'm about to get into a pulmonary rehab situation where I don't know, they're gonna throw me on some treadmills and whatnot and make sure I don't die and all that. I was actually doing really well when I got out of the hospital for a couple months. I was not on oxygen. I'm on an oxygen concentrator right now, but in December, I got just something that just felt like a random kind of little cold or something, and it just wouldn't go away. And I had to I'm on steroids, but I had to up my steroids because my oxygen levels were so low. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're not rambling, Sean, please.
What was I am?
No, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I saw somebody bring it up in the post. On the books, you are counted as a COVID recovered. They, so
in the books, I'm not even COVID anything.
You're not COVID?
Oh no, there's no COVID.
Well, they weren't testing people
Being
widely in
sarcastic.
January. Yeah, they weren't testing widely in January. I mean, you guys probably remember this, but there was no ability to test until well
There was
into
no
March.
test.
Oh yeah, no, but I never got the test. And I mean, I had my respiratory therapist and stuff in the hospital were we've been seeing people with these crazy respiratory problems since November, October of 2019. She was yeah, this has been happening for a while. I don't remember her name. I wouldn't say her name if you asked. Anyway, but like basically everyone in the hospital outside of any actual doctor who could write it down on paper was like, oh my God, of course. So, but I mean, I am not counted. I'm not you were saying earlier how many people are not counted, but a lot of them that are not counted just really didn't have symptoms, but maybe that. I had 4.5, almost 5 months in a hospital. I got holes all over my body. I got chest tubes. I had the whole,
Well,
and they just didn't know what it was then.
And
There was
you
a-
asked his prognosis. He's on Social Security disability now. He's on permanent disability.
well, Sean,
I'm handy capable.
Yeah, absolutely, man. As a Special Olympics coach, handy capable is the right terminology. But Sean, first of all, again, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
This broadcast is on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. A lot of people are going to watch this. I was hoping you could send out a message to everybody watching right now that may be on the fence for the vaccine.
Come on.
I mean,
Come on. I will even tell you, I'm sort of anti-vax. I mean, like in general, like I'm like, maybe everybody doesn't need to get shot up with everything all the time. You can just deal with it in your own. But no, not on this one. No, for sure. You should get vaccinated. I mean, it's not even like a question. You look at people who are vaccinated, you look at people who are not vaccinated, who's getting sick, who is extra spreading it. Like, it's not, you don't have to be a genius to understand that you should get a vaccine.
This evening, before Sean came on the show, he was collecting the last bit of trash from down here to take it out to the front curb. And when he came in, he'll stand up or go do the dishes. When he came in from taking out the trash, while I was trying to get online with y'all, he sat down and took his pulse ox, and it was at 77. So
Well, I mean,
he's
what are you gonna do?
impaired.
Well, yeah, and we're not trying to prove that I'm impaired. We're trying to tell people to not be stupid.
He once painted my whole house,
Well, I say, Sean. Ready to go, Sean?
Uh,
Where'd you go, bro? There you go.
I don't know. Something was happening with
No,
Jody's
we got
power
you back.
up. Yeah.
Well,
No, you guys could call me back again. I'm sure I'm at least somewhat interesting. And I mean, I don't have any, like, no, I got no political affiliations or anything. It's like, this is just what happened to me. And it sucks. And I mean, God, I could tell you about so much crazy, like being in a coma and being oh my God, the delirium and stuff that comes from that. It's like, and most people don't really know a whole lot about it. It's pretty fucked up.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like what you're describing is a really rocky, awful ICU course. And we see that all the time with COVID, and I think people have no idea what they're signing up for when they say, you know what, it's just a virus. It only kills 1% of the people who get it. I don't need to get the shot. I'll just get taken care of if I need to get taken care of. And we have these people now that are spending months in the hospital with all the kinds of experiences that you're describing, and it's a horror show. I mean, we can keep people alive, but their quality of life is, I mean, I don't want to say we're torturing them because we're not trying to hurt them, but it's a kind of torture, right? Where you don't know what time of day it is, waking up at random times.
There's no one fix for it either. Like, it's so random. I mean, I really believe that it's like it's your immune system and how it decides to attack different things. That's like really like, I saw somebody describing it like it's like a tornado. It just goes through And it's like, okay, you survived the tornado, but what is left of your body, anything, like your organs, different systems? It's like, it's not just like, oh, it just does this. It's like, it just kind of sweeps through, and we'll see how you turn out. Like, I don't really have any heart problems, but I only have the equivalent of one lung. I had two lungs before. So I don't know.
And also he's on
Oh my goodness.
steroids
I talked about
and
it.
methotrexate, and that's not good.
No, I look way fatter than I did before. I got the
Jody,
blue face going on.
I hope I don't get Jody in trouble, but she shared with me the photos of when you were in the hospital.
Oh no,
a while back. A while back. I should have prepared. I think, Sean. They say a picture paints 1,000 words, but I'm looking at
use it as much as you want. I don't care if you use it.
Well, there's nothing better than you sharing your story live. I think, and I'm reading the comments. I don't know if you have Facebook running, but please go read the comments afterwards. There's a lot of love going out to you right now. A lot of prayers going out to you right now, Sean. A lot of appreciation for you, Sean. And Jody, thank you for making this happen.
Oh, you're welcome. You know what? I every year for 15 years I'm coming to Kauai in October, and Sean, his first wife, had a place on Kauai, so it's near and dear to our hearts, which is why I'm here. And what I want to say is, I feel bad when you guys feel like the tourists are coming and bringing it, and yes, they are, but it's not just they're coming to Hawaii. It's everywhere. Look at the United States map.
Whoa, duh.
And so what Hawaii has to do, and I think since there's this uptick, is we have to go back to having them make it as hard to get any person off a plane as it is to get my dog to Kauai, with multiple rabies tests and checks and spending hundreds of dollars to get that she's healthy enough to come. And so this is what they need to do. And I'll call the governor. I actually emailed the governor.
No,
listen, I emailed the governor to say, who could I talk to? And so I think, seriously, to say, but now with the uptick, there's been a change. So they can do something other than the Safe Hawaii thing. They need to kick it up a notch.
Jody, I want to hug you so bad. You don't even realize it.
Well, someday.
You're singing her tune here.
But everybody, what you guys have to do is vaccinate yourselves. Every damn one of you, and vaccinate yourselves to protect you from this monster that's coming to get you all.
Hey,
Please.
Jody.
Everybody here has it in the whole country.
I'm almost afraid to ask this question because it's only a 1-hour show. But
I would be
hey,
afraid
Jody,
to ask any question to Jody.
Jody, what I want to get from you, Jody.
Yes.
Here, can you?
Yes.
He's in the hospital. He's in a coma. Obviously, no one can see him. What is the stress like on the family, on like you and?
Oh my God! Well, his parents sat at his bedside the entire time.
Yeah, I think people think you're his mom. This is his mother-in-law, folks. I just for those of you that are putting down, your mom. This is Sean's mother-in-law, but
no, I'm his mother-in-law. My daughter is his woman.
Okay, good.
And but his parents were there, and my daughter was working at the time. She was a field organizer for the Bernie Sanders campaign, so she was working her butt off. So I kind of took her place, sitting at Sean's side much of the time. And
I don't remember anything.
he doesn't. He was just lying there. But from the time he got in the hospital,
I was
his
almost
x-rays
dead.
kept getting worse and worse, and they were all white, and this ground glass, they kept saying this ground glass. They showed me the imaging, and so I just want everyone on all of the islands to get vaccinated, because
you want to go there.
everybody who is coming they're bringing it there, yes, but just pretend it's rabies and pretend everybody getting on a plane to come there is a dog. That's all I have to say. Look
Jody,
at that.
No, Jody, I mean, I don't think that analogy has ever been made, but I think it's a great one. Doc,
I think you should run
Of
for
course it
governor.
hasn't.
I think you got my vote.
I mean,
Or
you
a
got-
native plant. I mean, a non-native plant. I've got a non-native milkweed. I'm breeding monarchs here. I got a bunch of caterpillars and chrysalide. But if I wanted to bring that milkweed with me,
But you could
Not
come
getting
there,
in.
But you could come there with COVID.
but I can come there with a fake COVID ID. So everybody needs a vax to get into the state. Hard copy, yeah. And I say a COVID test when they get there. And everybody else, get your gosh darn vaccines, please. It's like throwing a toddler in a pool with or without a life vest. It's the life vest that you're putting on the baby before throwing the
Well,
baby
that
in.
toddler might do okay. Anyway.
Here's Sean. Good night. Love y'all.
I don't know
Sean,
how it got thrown back to me after that.
Hey, Sean, thank you again, buddy. We love
You're
you, my
welcome.
man. We've
You're
been
welcome.
praying for
Jody's
you.
been talking about this for like 2 weeks. She's like, you gotta
Well-
go on this podcast. And I was like, I'll talk to anybody. I mean, I don't have anything else to do. I'm sitting here in a chair watching the news, yelling at the
Well,
politicians and stuff.
I'm gonna share this video with our local news. They all watch it. The governor watches it. Everybody watches this, and we'll make sure they get
Governor.
it.
Post Sean's pictures. Tell them they can post it.
Yeah, you can use any pictures. Or she also posted a video of me with when I was on the ventilator and all that stuff.
Do you want him to add that?
Yeah, maybe she'll send it
Well,
to you. It's
Don't be surprised if you don't get another invite to come back on our show. I am planning a what I call a survivor COVID survivor show. Not a recover, because I mean, I think you're living proof right here, buddy, that the life
Well,
after COVID can be very difficult.
it's difficult. I mean, I have a ton of problems. I just can't really do anything that I used to do. I mean, I used to sing and play music and stuff, and I just don't have it in me anymore. For now, come on.
That's it, my man. Keep the faith, my
good
bro.
vibes coming. Yeah.
We will. Bro, you got a lot of vibes going your way. I'm telling you, go read the comments afterwards. We appreciate you. We love you, my man. You guys stay safe. God bless.
Thanks.
Ah.
It's fun to do something like this because I have barely been to the apron of the driveway in 2 months. So this is
Sean,
as far as I've gotten.
Sean, do you have Facebook?
Of course.
Okay,
mean-
what is it? How can we find you on Facebook? People are asking.
I don't know. Sean Malone.
Sean,
No,
is it?
I'll show him how to friend you.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
put them
figure
out.
it out.
And Sean Malone, is that what it is? Malone?
We got malonesmart@gmail.com.
All right. We'll go ahead and
That's-
find you, my man.
Yeah.
All right, Sean. Thanks. Thank you, Jody. Appreciate you guys.
SHAWN.
SHAWN. Got it.
Malone.
Yeah. I really, it's fine if people want to talk to me, but I don't really need any extra anything. All right.
You're a good guy, man. God bless.
Love
buddy.
you guys.
Love you,
Mahalo,
man.
really.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Aloha. Hey,
Aloha.
Doc.
Aloha. Okay, how does this?
Hey, Doc. Doc, that's kind of classic, right?
Yeah, it is. I think we weren't diagnosing nearly enough prior to March, April of last year. And it's still not entirely clear to me what the transmission chains were. I do remember seeing some stuff that came out by the virologist, Trevor Bedford, that when we finally began testing in late March, early April, what we found were there were different, strains circulating in different parts of the United States. And then he was able to do sort of a reverse clock on the mutations and trace some of those back. And, we know that some of those chains had been going on for weeks before we discovered them. So I think it's almost certainly the case that there were people that were getting sick in not huge numbers, but in significant numbers before it really blew up and became public. I think the very first case that was found that was for sure transmission within the United States wasn't until like the end of February, something like that. Prior to that, we had those silly rules. I'm talking about 2020 now, of course. We had those silly rules where it was like you couldn't order a test on somebody unless they had traveled to Wuhan, China. And then it was, okay, now you can order the test if they've traveled to Wuhan, China, or one of the other provinces in China that has cases. Okay, now you can order it if they've been to Korea. So they were constantly weeks behind in terms of their testing restrictions. And the result is that when we finally uncovered it, there were already these brisk transmission chains in several parts of the United States, meaning that people have been getting sick with undiagnosed, viral pneumonia for weeks. And I talk a little bit about that in the book and the testing fiasco, not just in Hawaii, but in the United States in general, and how far behind we were. And as a doctor, it freaked me out because I was constantly worried that I was going to be missing a case, So every time, somebody had respiratory symptoms and I couldn't get the test, I was like, well, is this the one? Is this the case that's going to start transmitting in the hospital and cause a big cluster of pneumonia? Fortunately at Queens, when we finally got a big wave of patients, we had testing available. The testing had only come online like a few days before, a week or two before, something like that. And there were a few cases that went through that were undiagnosed pneumonia that I'm confident were COVID, that were undiagnosed, but they just looked like COVID on chest CT or on chest X-ray. So we know that was happening. It's a tragic story, and it's very brave of him to share it in that level of detail with everybody. And what he described in the ICU is the norm for what happens when you go into the ICU. And in a way, if you're a relatively young, healthy person, you're more likely to have that kind of a rocky ICU course. It's your adrenaline is pumping, and you're oftentimes in a situation where you're fighting against the vent or you're fighting against the sedation, and you end up getting drugged every which way from Sunday in order for them to be able to ventilate your lungs and keep you relatively calm. And it's not uncommon for there to be all kinds of complications. So if you can avoid that hell, you should try to avoid it. It doesn't make sense to me that people are so confident that they know that the shot is bad, but then they're just going to allow us to do that kind of stuff. I mean, I would always rather avoid the hospital if I could. And I'm telling you that as somebody who works in the hospital, and a lot of my best friends are in the hospital, and I think it's a well-intentioned place. We try to do good work, but if you can avoid the hospital. Avoid the hospital. I mean, it's always better to avoid the hospital. So,
well, I tell you, one of the things that I picked up on Sean's comments were only his pulmonologist thought, or made him believe anyway, that he would survive.
yeah.
And that's kind of eye-opening. But the point I'm trying to make to every single body that's listening, and guys, you guys need to share this video with your friends, and maybe go check where Sean's segment starts and tell people to fast forward if you guys don't want to hear us. But I think everybody needs to see Sean's story. But imagine our doctors, like Dr. Dworkin right here, all of our nurses, respiratory therapists, all of our people in the hospitals that are taking care of these patients day in and day out, as sick as they may get, that these nurses and doctors are working on patients that they believe are going to die. Can you imagine the emotional toll on our doctors, our nurses, respiratory therapists, our support staff, all of the housekeepers, everybody at the hospital? I keep saying this because I don't know how you thank these people. They get no recognition, no thanks. And they're stuck with this working double shifts of looking at taking care of very sick people. Come on, guys, we can do better. We can do better. I'm gonna put this up again, Doc. I made this last week. I'm not even gonna change it. It's kind of scuffed up, but I always say this, we don't need the governor to lock us down. We can do our own personal lockdown. We can be our own, we can do our own personal lockdown. In other words, we can, number one, get vaccinated, wear our mask, social distance, wash your hands, stay away from gatherings. All of the things that we are wanting the governor to do, not travel unnecessarily. We can do that without an order. We got to stop this virus, people. Look at Sean, look at his mother-in-law. And again, the doctors and the staff that's got to be out there trying to save their lives. And then look at Sean today, struggling. But the economy has recovered. The economy has recovered. He has not recovered. He survived. He didn't recover. So, Doc,
and imagine the 2021 Sean story, which is that, someone like him is ending up in that situation now because somebody they sat next to on an airplane didn't want to wear a mask or didn't want to get a vaccine. And this is what makes me angry now is that this antisocial mindset, this immature mindset of I have the freedom to maim somebody else who just happens to have the bad luck of having walked near me or breathed the same air that I've breathed for a few minutes, and this is why vaccination really is not just a personal choice. I mean, it is a personal choice, but it's also more than a personal choice. If I step on a rusty nail and I go to the ER and the ER doc says, hey, I want to give you a tetanus shot so that you don't get tetanus. And I say, you know what? I've done my own research and I've decided the risk of tetanus is pretty low and I don't care about tetanus. I'm not going to take that tetanus shot. Well, only I'm going to run the risk of dying that horrible tetanus death, right? Because tetanus isn't transmissible between people. But when you've got a disease that you can transmit to 5 or 6 other people, the decisions you make about how you behave affect all those people around you. And what I'm finding with people who are resisting things like masking and vaccination is there's a lower than there should be level of concern for the people around them. And we need to fix that. That's not okay. And if there's a certain amount of intolerance that they're experiencing from their friends and families, well, that's why, it's like drunk driving, and you may kill yourself when you're drunk driving, but you may kill somebody else when you're drunk driving. And that's why people don't like drunk drivers. So there's an element here that goes beyond individual freedom that I think just has to be acknowledged. It's morally different. And that's not to say that all concerns about vaccination are legitimate. Again, I think when you're talking to somebody, it's best to try to hear them and what their concern is. And oftentimes there are very legitimate concerns. It doesn't mean that they're rational concerns. You can still talk about, well, does it make sense to be more afraid of the virus or of the vaccine than the virus? What he was describing with his lung shutting down and the ARDS and the blood clots, that's what people call natural immunity. And I feel like natural immunity has a great PR program. When you get infected with a bad viral pneumonia with COVID, you get horrible destruction of the lungs. You can go into ARDS. You can get endothelial destruction. The cells that line the blood vessels start to break down. And you get blood clots through your body, right? This is the immune system responding to the virus. That's quote unquote natural immunity. It's not always benign. And if you're lucky, it will be. If you have a very well-honed immune system that responds to the virus very efficiently. But if you're not lucky, you get these horrible, horrible consequences of basically the immune system responding to the virus. So, what a vaccination is it's an attempt to create a very focused immune response against one part of the virus that is the most likely to cause infection. And what we see is that the immune dysregulation is much less common. And that's why vaccination is actually much safer than natural immunity. So, people need to talk through this on a one-on-one basis. But I guess my basic point is that when you're making these decisions, it's not just about you.
Couldn't have said it better, Doc. And again, you can go on TV and give away coupons for food or trips to Vegas and try to bribe people. You can threaten them that if they don't listen, you're gonna get fired, or you
Yeah.
can show them what COVID really is, and how a vaccine can help you. I think if you inform and educate, which is our theme, if you can inform and educate the people, obviously you're going to get a lot of people that will still say no. But I think
Yeah.
if they understand, if they truly understand, if everyone, I can tell you right now, if you look all the people that are on the fence right now, you got those that are not going to take them. We're not going to change their mind. But there's a ton of people that are on the fence. If you made them listen to Sean's story, and you had a vaccination clinic right outside that door, you'd be pounding some arms. I gotta be honest, man. I think that
Yeah, we're pretty good at it. I mean, when we have these individual conversations at clinic, I oftentimes can convince people, because most people want to do the right thing and they're just getting bad information. And you don't have to oversell the vaccine. I mean, that's the other thing. You don't have to make it a panacea. Obviously, it's not perfect, right? When I started seeing more breakthrough infections, even mild breakthrough infections, I thought, oh shit, that's not what I wanted to see. I wanted to see a vaccine that prevented all transmission, right? Because then we're done with this thing. And we're not there yet. We're going to have to probably come up with something better in the next year or two. But if it can stop us from filling up the hospitals with desperately ill people, aside from the fact that we're not going to have as many people maimed and dead, it's also going to allow us to have a more normal year. And what I'm really thinking about is kids. I mean, for God's sakes, we got to do our best to make sure that we're not having to shut down schools again. And it's hard to imagine doing that when we have uncontrolled transmission of virus and the hospital's full.
well, Patrick King proved in court COVID doesn't exist. It hasn't been contained. Game over. Not sure what that means, but that's just I don't this thing scrolls so quick every so often. But it stopped on that one, so I don't know, Kaipo. I'm not sure what you mean, but maybe you want to rephrase that. But if anyone still thinks COVID doesn't exist,
One more thing, I just want to call out. I'm up in Waimea, and one of the schools up here, the Parker School, decided that they wanted kids over 12 to be vaccinated and faculty to be vaccinated. And a lot of the schools in Hawaii are moving in that direction. I don't think it's just Parker, but they were one of the first ones to move on it. And the amount of vitriol, the amount of kind of disgusting hatred that was directed at the administration of the school, not by many people, but by a few people, was really unbelievable. There were people basically calling the school administrators Nazis, And this is the level of incivility that we're now seeing. My family, my grandmother's family was wiped out by Nazis. So we know something about Nazis in my family. And, the head of the school is not a Nazi. He's doing his best to make sure that the kids have a normal experience and that they don't have to break up class all the time because they're having uncontrolled transmission in the school. And I understand why people might feel anxious about that or might even disagree with it. But to be behaving that way, it's just so insane. And what I really hope for us going forward is that we pull together a little bit and show some courage. And people who show courage and are trying to win, we should admire those people because they're catching a lot of flack. They're catching a lot of crazy right now. And I'm sure you're catching a lot of crazy too, Mel.
oh yeah, again, I respect everybody's choice. I really do. But like Mayor Harry Kim said so eloquently. I don't know if you watched the last show he was on, but he talked about how it is our responsibility to take care of our kids. They are too young. We're talking the little ones, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have to make sure that we protect them as adults. And for some people, protecting their kids means not getting them a vaccine. Some people honestly believe it's bad. Again, it's everyone's choice. But I tell you, if we don't get a handle on this virus, and I think as more and more people unfortunately, more and more people get sick, and more people die, and more people get to meet people like Sean, or it gets close to your family, like in my case with my daughter and everybody else, I think you start thinking differently. You start looking at things differently. I know for a fact that if I was unvaccinated and I saw Sean's story tonight, a guy who's basically doesn't support vaccines, but this one, you know why? Because he never had tetanus or rubella or all of these nasty diseases, but he had COVID, and he knows that COVID is the worst freaking thing that you can have. So he makes an exception for the COVID vaccine. So, it is what it is, guys. Doc, again, any closing thoughts before we head off? I know I appreciate you guys. We went way over time. Doc, I always, I feel bad when we keep our guests 5 minutes late, but shit, man, we're an hour over. Any closing thoughts, man? You appreciate it.
Yeah, just if you've got healthcare providers in your circles right now, look out for us a little bit. I mean, it's been a little rough. We're working very hard. We don't feel very appreciated because we're in a situation where we're being asked to do a job that is fundamentally a little bit dangerous and certainly stressful and taxing. And it's clear that the government and the business community aren't willing to do their part to control the disease. So I think it's a little bit lonely for us right now, and I think we're all feeling a little bit burned out and strung out. And what I ask for is that people see our humanity also, and that we're trying our best, and see the good that we're trying to do. Even if you don't agree with what we're telling you to do, you can see us as human beings. So I guess that's my parting thought.
Well, Doc, again, man, much appreciation for you, sir. Just as a friend, man, just as a friend. And I just saw my little alert thing comes on my phone, the KHON2, it says vaccinations climbing. However, quarantine space is limited. So a lot of families now that are required to isolate and quarantine have nowhere to go. Again, a lot of the collateral damages, a lot of the consequences that no one talks about until it happens, because there's no real planning. Guys, we gotta stick together. Harry Kim said we have a common enemy. It's COVID. It's the Delta variant. We gotta come together to fight this menace, this enemy. So with that, folks, appreciate all of you for hanging in there. We still got a bunch of people on. I'm shocked. Charlie had to take off because he's actually working tonight. Appreciate he stayed on as long. And of course, Doc, thank you so much. We'll be back on Wednesday night. You guys all take care, stay safe, God bless. And hey, don't forget, you put your head down tonight. Say a prayer for Sean and everyone that is at home with COVID and the families that lost loved ones. All right, guys, take care, God bless.